Ladies and gentlemen, the FootballScoop Podcast is back. We had another incredible week in college football, unless you're an LSU fan. We can talk about that later, but we're going to start. Scott Roussel, got college football expert, Zach Barnett, John Brice, high school football coach extraordinaire, content manager, FootballScoop, Doug Samuels. Great to see you, Doug. We're going to start where it matters most, Friday Night Lights, high school football. We had a dandy in Michigan Friday night. Doug's team, Comstock Park. Down, all right, Doug, set the stage. Y'all are down, with about 2 minutes to play. Give me a short recap of that first drive to get a touchdown.
Down a touchdown. They kicked off. We made a sub trying to find a spark with our kick returners. That backfired. We took over on our own 9-yard line. 2 minutes, under 2 minutes left, about 1:45. Put together a 13-play drive. Had all 3 of our timeouts. Had a couple big passes, some big scrambles by our quarterback. Got down to the 2-yard line. I think we had 1 timeout left. Ran the ball once. Got down to the 1-yard line. Had to call that timeout, and then we punched it in at the beginning of the drive. I was saying, hey, we're in hostile territory. It's their homecoming game. Like I'm thinking about going for 2 and just ending this here and get on the bus and let's go home. Decided to kick the field goal instead. And then here's where the funny story actually starts. Is I went to my special teams coordinator and I said, we hadn't been covering kicks very well the past 2 weeks. I said, hey, he goes, hey, you want to bunch it? And I said, yeah, let's just punch it on the ground, slow squibber. And they line up and they do a bunch with a B onside kick. And I just sat there watching it. Like my brain was not processing it. I was expecting a punch squib kick. Nope, it was the bunch onside kick.
All right, jumped on. Here we go. There's the bunch onside kick, and we recover. Amazing. All right, so Doug, you recover, and you have how many seconds left?
There are 5.2 seconds left, I think.
All right, there's 5 seconds left, and the score's tied.
Correct.
All right, and we're right about the 50. High school, probably a little bit too far. So let me harken you back a week ago. We had just come off of Ohio State scoring with one play to go, and Notre Dame receives the kickoff, and they do this stupid little lateral thing. So let's go back to that conversation real fast. Let's just listen to this.
We tried to get the best head coach in football on. So we got Doug Samuels. Doug, great to have you. Doug, I got a question for you, a tactical question. You're Notre Dame. You got like 1 second on the clock, whatever it is. You have 1 play. Kickoff goes out of bounds, I believe. They're at 35. And I'm saying to myself, you gotta try and get pass interference to get 15 more yards, and then you got a shot to go to the end zone. And they do the stupid, I'm going to throw it 5 yards. I'm going to lateral it, and get tackled, and it's just going to be dumb anyway. That's giving up. Why, you're a head football coach, why aren't you striving to do something to score?
That is true. But you're not – chances of you getting that call on the last play of the game to extend the drive and get another shot at it are just slim to none. I really didn't have any issue with the call. You lay it up short, you get a couple laterals in there. But those type of situations are either miraculous and the band storms the field and you run people over, and just disastrously with the Sam Hartman, throwing that ball forward, and it wasn't great. So that's a no win.
All right, so that was 1 week ago on this very podcast, and I started that with we invited the best head coach in the country on. We got Doug Samuels. The best head coaches adapt. So a week ago, Doug saying, I'm okay with a little multiple lateral. Kevin Kelly says there's a good chance you score if you get tossed around a couple of times. But great coaches adapt. So Doug, in his ultimate wisdom, decides to do what? On that first play, what are we going to do, Doug?
Hail Mary. Switch a couple kids around through the Hail Mary.
I don't know if we can make it there. Maybe we get a 15-yard penalty. We'll see.
That kid from the left going to be the tip guy.
Oh, the quarterback gets hit out of bounds. But there's a 15-yard penalty. You know what that, Doug, does? You know what that does, Doug? Gives you another shot to go win the game. All right, set it up for me, Doug. Here we go. Here's the winner.
It does. So we went back to a play we called on the drive where we had our receiver bust open deep. We came back to it, same exact play. We overthrew that first one. This one, we just had to give him a shot. Ball tipped up in the air, and he comes down with it.
Miraculous, some would say. Miraculous. I love it. Great coaches adapt. Doug Samuels adapted. I'm going to show that play one more time because the key that I played, Doug, I don't know if you picked it up. I might have played guard my senior year in high school. Your right guard picks up the blitzing linebacker. Watch what he does. Runs him completely out of the play. Linebacker's coming. Right guard says, not today, Satan. You're going to get run 10 yards past the quarterback. Quarterback steps up left, heaves it. We got a catch and a win. Comstock Park for the dub.
That right guard's a sophomore, and actually the kid that caught the pass didn't practice all week because we were walking to a soccer game, and he was jumping around with his cleats on in the parking lot and came down on his ankle wrong and rolled his ankle. So didn't practice most of the week. So that's high school football for you.
That's unbelievable coaching right there. To have faith in him that he couldn't practice all week, and you trust him with the game on the line. So, Doug, what's your tip drill like? I see defenses probably do more tip drills than offenses. Is that tip drill on an offensive Hail Mary play something that you practice?
I've never done a tip drill whatsoever, and actually that play I went and visited with the Big Ten staff this offseason. That was mesh X post and almost cut mesh going into this season because we weren't getting any mileage out of it. And now it just, that visit with that Big Ten staff helped us win that game essentially.
That's pretty dope.
That's awesome.
Like I was saying before we recorded, like that y'all's comeback should go viral. Like, I mean, I spend way too much time on TikTok, and there's accounts that will, high school football, this, that, and they'll do a good job of showing crazy games. And this one is got to be one of the craziest wins of high school, college, NFL we'll see all season long.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's talk some college football. I'm going to run through some games real quick. Quick thoughts. Auburn gave Georgia way more than Georgia wanted. Is Georgia deserving of maintaining that number one ranking? Is Georgia going to be there at the end?
I thought long and hard about dropping them, and I ultimately kept them there. And maybe I'm showing too much respect to the helmet because if anyone else was in that, had their resume at this point, I'd say no. They're not the team that I'm most afraid of lining up across the scrimmage from my team at this point in the season. So, if Georgia, you're on notice. If you don't play like a number one team, I'm dropping you on my ballot next week.
Georgia's got Kentucky's coming to town. Kentucky with Liam Cohen back. Running that operating the offense. Sheesh, Kentucky's gonna give them a handful.
Yeah, Kentucky's physicality is what impressed me the most on Saturday. And the Wildcats had struggled offensively throughout the early part of the season. They had slumbered through some games, especially against some inferior MAC opponents. But Kentucky sent notice Saturday. I watched that game very intently. And again, what impressed me the most is us flip back and forth between, or actually had that in the Colorado USC game on split screen. But what really impressed me was how physically Kentucky's O-line manhandled Florida up front, especially just after Florida had bottled up that high-powered Tennessee offense and really physically whipped the Vols. And so I picked Kentucky to win that game. I did not pick Kentucky to dominate that game. So this will by far and away be the best litmus test thus far for Georgia. And to Zach's point, yeah, if they had any other jersey name on and had gone on the road and been lucky to eke out a win against an Auburn team that a week ago gave up 14 TFLs and 7 sacks in one game versus A&M, they would get dropped. But Georgia's there because it has been the preeminent program in college football since the onset of the 21 season.
So you mentioned lumbering through some MACs on your schedule. Michigan beat Nebraska. And honestly, Michigan, I wouldn't want to play Michigan right now, but Michigan doesn't play anybody. What is Michigan? And Michigan's going to they'll be there at the end.
Their first 8 games are, they've played nobody, Nebraska. And then next up they get, I think, Minnesota. There may be an Indiana squeaked in there, and then Michigan State. Like their November is pretty tough, but their September-October schedule is offensive to me, my family, and everything we stand for as Americans.
I really thought Michigan was like the least impressive. And granted, they were without Jim Harbaugh, but I don't think he's a huge difference maker as the head coach. He's not calling plays. He's, managing the game and stuff. But to win those first 3 games by like identical 30-7 scores was just very, very uninspiring. Would they have put up 60 if Harbaugh was there? No, I don't think so. But to me, I felt like their last weekend's game against Nebraska, or Saturday's game against Nebraska, was the most impressive they've looked this season.
All right, I bet Texas. I didn't see them playing versus Kansas. I know what happened, but Zach, give me some thoughts there.
They put up 40 and it probably should have had 60. I mean, they didn't punt once, had like 660 yards of offense. Lost probably their best player, tight end Jatavian Sanders. Jalen Daniels, Kansas quarterback, didn't play, so that put a damper on things. But I mean, they dominated the game. Like it was not as close as the 26-point final score. Got everything they wanted offensively and defensively. Threw for 325, ran for 340 something. So it was what you wanted to see coming into the biggest game of the year.
JB, did you get to see much of Penn State Northwestern?
I saw a fair amount of it. I did. I was very surprised to see Penn State scuffling as it was early on, just because I think Penn State has identified itself through the first month of the season as having a much more capable offense, a much more dynamic offense, and we weren't seeing that early on. Now, Northwestern was playing with a lot of energy and emotion coming off that incredible comeback win last week against Minnesota. And in the second half, Drew Aller got untracked even more. Of course, Singleton is a really, really good running back, and Penn State really imposed its will. And look, you're going to have some of those games like that, especially when Penn State had the whiteout environment a week before and had done everything to just completely dominate Iowa for 4 quarters. So once Penn State woke up, it really seized control of that game and, again, kept everything right in front of it.
Washington and Oregon both handled their business. How much fun is that game going to be when that one comes? That's not this upcoming weekend, but the next.
You're looking at the game of the year in the Pac-12, I think. And so an argument for the game of the year in college football. They're second and fourth in scoring. And Michael Penix is, I think, second in passing efficiency. Bo Nix is up there. Like, it's going to be a playoff-worthy game and a playoff-worthy atmosphere in Seattle. Like, I can't wait for that game. I hope it's not going to be, but I hope it's a Pac-12 after dark game, just so we can all focus 100% on that game.
Agreed. Zach, tell me about Lincoln Riley's confidence in Alex Grinch.
Yeah, he came out after the game and said that to the naked eye they look bad, but that you're just the unwashed masses. To a coach, the USC defense is much better. They just need to fix this, fix that, and they'll be right where they need to be, which I'm sure he was saying the same things last year. Like on the chalkboard, I'm sure the USC defense is sound, but consistently they're not doing the things that good defenses do. They're a yard per play improved over where they were last year, but they've played nobody except for Colorado so far, and they have to play for their next 5 after Arizona this coming Saturday are Utah, Notre Dame, which are going to be challenges in a different way than Colorado, obviously, and then Washington, Oregon back to back. So I think they're the clear third best team in the Pac-12 right now, and if Cam Rising's healthy, then I think they're the clear 4th best team in the Pac-12.
Ooh, I can't agree with that yet. I haven't seen enough out of Utah's offense. I do think Southern Cal is incredibly vulnerable, and look, Lincoln Riley has to make those comments because he brought Alex Grinch back and promised that things would be better. And they were lucky to win that game after being in complete command throughout the first half against Colorado. It was very similar to the week before that Notre Dame-Ohio State game, where you felt like Notre Dame found its offensive footing too late, but was really physically punishing Ohio State by that point. Colorado wasn't physically punishing USC, but it was getting what it wanted against USC. They held the ball for 32-plus minutes, had 560-ish yards of offense, obviously 41 points, And then they were 10 for 20 on the money downs, 9 of 18 on third downs, 1 of 2 on fourth down conversion. If your defense is giving up 50% conversion rate on money downs, it's not remotely getting the job done, in my opinion. Doug, I see you nodding your head. I would love to hear not only your thoughts on USC Colorado, but money down goals and objectives.
Well, it seems like Lincoln Riley's comments whenever asked about Alex Grinch have been the same for like 3 or 4 years. Like, yeah, we're close. And watching, some of the recaps of the game of that game in particular, Colorado made some incredible plays. They're obviously much improved. It's a storyline we've talked about time and time again. But I think what Lincoln Riley's saying is, hey, we've got guys in position, and they're at the end of the day, either the other team's making an incredible play or we're not making the play that we need to. But when you've got a roster full of 4- and 5-star kids like USC does, that excuse was old year one. So year two, it's awful. And the most frustrating thing as a coach is when you can't get off the field on third down. We've had our defensive struggles this year at the high school level. Nothing makes you want to pull your hair out like bad third down defense and not getting off the field. So 50% is unacceptable.
What's your target rate, Doug? I'm curious. Everybody has some different ones. A lot of it, third and short, they want to try to stop at least 40 or 45% of those, depending on the situation from a defensive standpoint. When it's 3rd and 7 or more, then the target is like 60% from some guys I've talked to. Just what are the kind of the landmarks that you try to establish?
I think over the course of a game, if you can get off the field 1 out of every 3 times, I think that's great. 1 out of every 4 is outstanding. I take that any day of the week. But Brent Venables was talking last week how, and I plan on doing something with it here this week, how turnovers are no longer the barometer for wins. It's how are you doing on 1st and 10? If you can get a TFL and force teams in the 2nd and 13, offensive coordinators were always trying to get 5 yards on 1st down and then half of whatever you need on 2nd down. So you're always trying to get half of what you need on those 1st and 2nd downs to be efficient play calling wise. We're obsessed with that. And I got someone tracking it each game, but to go back to that 3rd down question, 25 to 33%, I feel like you can feel pretty good about 50%. You're staying up at night.
All right, I'm working my way through top 10 games right outside there. JB, you and I were seeing Notre Dame Duke as a good game. I kind of thought Duke had a way to win. I really like Riley Leonard. I just thought he had a shot to win that game. I know you thought Notre Dame was going to win the game. Notre Dame ultimately does. Leonard gets hurt right at the end, which is just such a shame. But JB, thoughts on that game overall?
Yeah, well, I talked to an ACC coach Friday evening and was getting his breakdown on Notre Dame Duke. He's a guy that has played both of those teams in recent years, and so I was really interested in his take. And he said, look, this Duke team is really, really good. He said, I really like Riley Leonard as one of the best 2 quarterbacks in our league. He was including Sam Hartman in that evaluation of naming him one of the 2, but his 2 were Drake May and Riley Leonard. And I thought that was very interesting. And he just said, look, this Duke team absolutely will not beat itself. He said they've got some guys, but they just never beat themselves. They're always in position. They're so well coached. And I think you saw that Saturday night. Duke did not beat itself. It had one real turnover in the meat of the game early on where Riley Leonard floated a pass across the middle that X Watts was able to step in front of and pick off. But then Notre Dame inherited possession inside the red zone and was limited to a field goal on that trip. And then Notre Dame had 12 penalties. So Duke was more composed over the course of the game. Duke made a number of big plays. And then Duke was really, really good on the defensive line of scrimmage. And Sam Hartman couldn't talk enough about those guys on the D-line. Of course, Jamion Franklin spent the first couple of his years here at Notre Dame before going to Duke. He had a really good game. The interior of Notre Dame's offensive line, which easily had played its best game of the season the week before against Ohio State, got really exposed Saturday night by Duke. Duke's going to be in position to win a lot more games even without Riley Leonard. Looks like a high ankle sprain. If he's able to come back and they can sort of weather his absence for a few weeks, they'll still have a lot to say in the course of the ACC race.
Yeah, I don't say he come back that soon from that. I think that's a tough blow. That's their leader. That's their guy. That's their captain. So
yeah, you have to expect he's going to miss minimum all of this month. Now Duke gets an open date coming up, so maybe you think Duke has to play at most 3 games without him, and how can they do in 3 and 4 games? If they go 2-2 without Riley Leonard, there's still going to be a complete factor in a lot of ACC happenings through the final weeks of the schedule in November.
This month is tough. They got NC State after the bye week, and at Florida State and at Louisville. So that's not when you want to be missing them.
I wish we had the TV copy didn't do this play justice, but that 4th and 16 scramble by Sam Hartman, so much respect for that dude. But if
phenomenal
you're Duke defense, I don't know how you allow that to happen. Obviously, 4th and 16, the last thing you're thinking is, all right, we can't let Hartman run for 17 on this play. But I mean, if I don't have the play in front of me, but it had to be some sort of man coverage breakdown, because if you're in zone, there's no way that happens. I would love to see a further evaluation of that play, because that was the game.
Bro, it was the exact same opposite of what happened to Notre Dame the week before. They had Ohio State 3rd and 19 and dropped 8 into coverage, and Ohio State still got the connection from Kyle McCord to Emeka Ibuka for 20 yards on 3rd and 19. Duke has controlled the middle of this contest all the way through most of the 4th quarter with its D-line, with a 4-man front, and with bottling things up around the line of scrimmage. For whatever reason, Duke dropped 8 in that situation and went in, dime coverage or whatever you want to call it, with an 8-man drop and left everything open. And because Notre Dame played that game, guys, with 3 wide receivers, period. They did not ever substitute any of their wide receivers. They were incredibly depleted. Their top wide receiver, Jaden Thomas, was out with a hamstring. Jaden Greathouse tweaked a hamstring late in the week. Deion Colsey, who had 2 touchdown catches, I think, in the opener against Navy, he had knee surgery on Thursday, so he was out. And then Matt Salerno broke a leg early in the season, maybe against Tennessee State, and is gone for the year. So they were already undermanned at wide receiver. And then you've covered them up all night in man coverage, and you've done better stuff around the line of scrimmage. And in that one situation, they dropped 8, and that might have been the only time all night they dropped 8 in coverage, and it ultimately cost them the game.
So Alabama has found their footing. Mississippi State's in kind of a flux, and I don't think we need to talk about that one, to be honest. I assume we're going to take the next 30 or 40 minutes to talk about LSU's defense.
Yeah. All right, Scott, lay out the path to the national title for the Tigers.
Well, we started early in the season, right? Before the season, we said LSU can score against anybody. We assumed the defense was going to be marginal, okay, suitable. You assume LSU's defensive backs would not be terrible. You assume Harold Perkins would be a rush linebacker, rush edge. Poor assumptions. 700 yards to the lane train. Whew, buddy. And how about, I don't know if y'all saw the video, that Ole Miss student, I'm going to assume he was a student who got in the goalpost, flipped off, and my man's hip has got to be hurting him today.
Well, he not only flipped off, but then he got escorted off by police who had let folks rush the field, but they did not take kindly to climbing up the goalpost. The guy made out with the goalpost. I don't know if you saw that. He literally laid down on the goalpost and kissed it all over. Then when he climbed over to the left post, he kissed the post while he was standing up and then did his flip off the post. And to you saying we could talk 30 or 40 minutes about the LSU defense, at this rate, if we talk 30 or 40 minutes about the LSU defense, we could score 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, have 500 yards offense.
Seriously. So LSU's brought Pete Jenkins in. Technically sound. I mean, that should be a boost, but I mean, LSU's season is fairly cooked.
And if they win out, let's just walk into fantasy land here. If they win out, are they still making the playoff?
No.
So if they win out, they beat Alabama.
You also beat A&M.
Do they still make it to the title championship game? If they win out,
most likely, yeah.
with 2 losses because Alabama would have 2 losses. They beat them head-to-head. Ole Miss would have to lose again.
Ole Miss is going to lose again.
Ole Miss would have to lose twice. Okay. It's
Yeah.
a little early in the morning for that game. No question.
Yeah. But then Texas A&M, while it has an ugly loss at Miami,
They have no conference losses, right?
right.
Yeah, we've got most likely the SEC West championship game in College Station on Saturday.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
All right, Oklahoma handled Iowa State. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that program, but it's not going in a good direction. Vols handled South Carolina in a big way. Any thoughts on that one, JB?
The biggest thought was that Tennessee's defense really made life miserable for Spencer Rattler. Not only had the pick 6 from Kamal Hadden, but rushed him extremely well. I want to say they had 6 sacks in that game. And I talked to some people on Thursday, did some TV down in Knoxville, and it said, look, it's going to be who affects the quarterback more in this contest. South Carolina has not done a very good job of getting after the quarterback this year. Tennessee entered the game already with 16 sacks through 4 games. So now the Vols have 22 sacks through 5 games. They're doing a really good job of disrupting the quarterback. James Pierce looking really, really good, former 4-star recruit that they beat out South Carolina to sign a couple of years ago. And he was arguably the difference in the game for Tennessee. The Vols still have a lot of warts offensively. Joe Milton is still not particularly accurate downfield. But Tennessee really controlled that game start to finish. And then Spencer Rattler, ever the center of attention. And this is going in today's, they said, what? Content piece that's about to roll out right after this podcast said, hey, if you ain't got haters, you ain't popping. Hats off to them. This was their Super Bowl. That's a pretty tough, pretty strong statement when I got a stat for you guys. That was South Carolina's 3rd double-digit loss this season. Since Shane Beamer took over the program in 2021, they now have 11 double-digit losses. They have not played a game in October of 23, and they already have 11 double-digit losses. That's not a good omen.
I'm not sure any player has accomplished less in college football and has more haters than Spencer Rattler.
That's
that guy. He just tries hard to be unlikable.
I guess you're not popping, Zach, or you would have more.
I'm definitely not popping. So for the not popping community, I can speak for us.
All right, guys, we're nearly 30 minutes of this podcast. I'm going to get us out of here in like 3 minutes. I want quick thoughts. Houston now has 2 total wins on the season, 3 losses after getting rolled by Texas Tech.
Yeah, all incoming Big 12 teams, the 4 new ones are 1-7 in conference play, and the only win is Cincinnati or BYU over Cincinnati over BYU. Whoever won that game doesn't matter. They've only beaten each other and lost every other game.
Dave Aranda, I feel like, owes me a big thing because at some point I looked up and that score was ugly, and I said, man, what happened to Dave Aranda's squad? I mean, this is brutal. And then they roared back. Tell me, like, how did this happen?
Yeah, there's a complete meltdown by UCF. You had a key I mean, you can't lose that game without melting down. A key fumble, defense quit. Credit to Baylor for rallying. We've got to mention the key play in UCF's failed comeback where it's 4th down at the 30, and my man is about to take a safety in the end zone and then somehow converts it. Like only in college football.
Well, it looked like a Madden play or an old NCAA play. Just scramble around. You're playing against your little cousin that's never played the game before and convert a big 4th down.
Marshall is 4-0. They got a win, a nice win over Old Dominion. Just beat Virginia Tech, last week, Power 5 win. Just bold prediction. Charles Huff is not going to be Marshall's head coach next year. He's going to Power 5. Oregon State really played well against Utah. Home game. DJ missed some open passes, but was enough. I like Oregon State.
Really good running the football, really physical football team. And much like we just talked about with Duke, Oregon State essentially never beats itself. Sometimes, look, they just don't have the horses that they're lining up against. But Jonathan Smith has been superb there. And you wonder with the uncertainty around Oregon State in the Pac-12 and all of that. I know that's his alma mater. He's been dynamic there. He's done so much. But you just have to wonder, can Oregon State hang on to him with all this uncertainty? Because he is quietly or not so quietly doing one of the best jobs anywhere in college football and sustaining it now for a few seasons.
Maryland scores points in bunches. I think they go at Ohio State this weekend. Can they shock Ohio State?
Look, they've much lesser teams. They took Ohio State to the wire in recent years. They're going to have the confidence. They're going to have the swagger and belief. That's one thing that Locks has reinstilled there. I think we're going to have more on his sort of career renaissance at Maryland later this week. I think he's going to hop on a call with Football Scoop coming up in the next day or two. I look forward to diving into that. But they can score points, and Ohio State is not particularly scoring a lot of points. And so Maryland won some shootouts last year, lost some shootouts. Maryland's defense appears to be much better this year. This weekend will be the test, but Talia Tagovailoa is playing so well directing that offense. And so Maryland will have the rare situation where it has the better quarterback, in my opinion, going into a matchup with Ohio State.
All right, I got two and then we're out. Pitt has no offense. What happened?
I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Doug.
Think about some of the offensive coordinators that Pat Narduzzi has lost over the past, 7 years. Yeah, he had Matt Canada, whose star has fallen drastically since he left. Mark Whipple did a really nice job at Pitt a handful of years ago before he left for Scott Frost's final season at Nebraska. But yeah, the offensive identity-wise is a huge question mark. Defensively, they aren't that good either. It's not a great time for Pitt football.
All right, not to turn the screw even worse, but West Virginia is 4-1 after they win at TCU. How did Neil Brown get things back on the rails?
I think this is an example of stability. I think Neil has taken a much more active role in the West Virginia offense as he's had to make some changes through there for losing coaches or whatever reasons. And I think it's showing up. I think Neil is much more directly involved, and they are a little bit of an older team now. They've still had some attrition, and they've been through a lot in recent years. But I do think, he barely survived last year, and he has to respond in kind over the course of this year. 4-1 is a great way to getting more job security, but it's not job security all the way there yet. But again, I do think this is a byproduct of just some modest stability in that program from last year to this year.
So he's 4-1. He's got Houston, Oklahoma State, UCF, BYU for closing out Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Baylor.
Houston and Oklahoma State are in a tenacious battle for worst team in the Big 12.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, West Virginia should win those two. All of a sudden, he's 6-1. Neil's agent's like, "Hey, can we get the 6 inches on, please?"
Yeah.
No, I almost said that. Yeah, you get bowl eligible, you start begging for some more job security for my man, and he would have earned it at that point. Like, look, when you go into the season knowing that the guillotine is hanging over your head, if you respond in this way and you've beaten one of your most hated rivals in Pitt, if you get to 6-1, then yeah, he absolutely should be begging for that extension. Whatever.
He should be begging for it. I don't know if he's earned it, but he should be begging for it for sure.
Good agents get that done.
Amen. Doug, congratulations on the win. Great fun to watch that. Thanks for recapping that for us on the pod. Maybe it'll go viral. You never know. Football Scoop Podcast, we're here every week. We'll come back later this week. Might have a couple of coaches in the middle. Everybody have a great week. FootballScoop.com. Enjoy the site. We sure do.